Okay, thanks everybody for coming. We are going to start chapter 4 of Pirkei Avot. Stephen, Rabbi Weinstein, take it away and read the first Mishnah. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. It's still opening. It should be here in a sec. Okay, here we go. All Israel have a share in the world to come.
No, start with one. Ben Zoma would say.
What?
Start with paragraph 1. Ben Zoma would say. Let's go skip a few lines where it says
Sorry.
1.
Okay, Ben Zoma would say, who is wise? One who learns from every man, as it is stated in Psalm 119:99. From all my teachers I have grown wise, for your testimonials are my meditation. Who is strong? One who overpowers his inclinations, as is stated in Proverbs 16:13. Better one who is slow to anger than one with might, one who rules his spirit than the captor of a city. Who is rich? One who is happy with his lot, as is stated Psalms 128:2. If you eat of the toil of your hands, fortunate are you and good is to you. Fortunate are you in this world, and good is to you in the world to come. Who is honorable? One who honors his fellows, as is stated 1 Samuel 2:30. For to those who honor me, I will accord honor. Those who scorn me will be demeaned.
Okay, good. So Ben Zoma was the son of Zoma. He's not called Rabbi. What's his name? He doesn't have a name. We just know him as the son of Zoma, Ben Zoma. Why? Because he died at a very young age, say the commentary, and he never even received smicha. He never received ordination. So we don't call him rabbi like Rabbi Judah or Rabbi Akiva and so forth, because he never made it to that post. So we call him the son of Zoma. Since he was so wise and he was such an incredible young adult, he still gets some white space and some ink space in the Mishnah, and we refer him to as Ben Zoma. And it's actually quite amazing stuff that he says over here, which, you know, people, Hollywood, our modern day culture, thousands of years later, take a lot from this Mishnah. So, Stephen, so we just read, who is wise? One who learns from every man. So I want to break out a little bit of a discussion over here. When it says who is wise, how would... Okay, Ben Zoma says who is wise, who learns from other people. But in 2023, like who would you say, Stephen, is a wise person? And please don't mention politicians. Who would you say is a wise person? Sylvia, you too. I'm happy to hear from you guys as well.
Think about this one.
You can unmute yourself. Like, was Albert Einstein wise? I'm not saying he's not. I just want to get your definition of now. Wise, and who is that person?
I thought the question was someone now.
Yeah, but so fine. Someone even in the last 100 years.
Einstein was smart in certain ways. I'm not sure if wise would be the word, because that sort of more refers to judgment as opposed to...
I agree. I actually agree. I think he was a genius. I don't think he was wise. Yeah. I think it's a valid question that could be asked at any dinner table. I don't think we're going to come up with the exact answer over here, but I know what Ben Zoma says. Ben Zoma says, who is wise, who learns from other people. So I really enjoyed that statement. And I think about it a lot, you know, who is a wise person. I think what you're saying is good. People who can discern and make judgment. So they're wise. But what's about a person who sits, you know, I don't know, behind a table or in a yeshiva or in a library, and people don't present their questions to him or to her. So you're never able to figure out if they're wise or not based on their judgment, because they never passed judgment. They never sat in a court, in a courthouse. So, okay. I mean, look, I obviously love what Ben Zoma said. I think what he's trying to say over here, perhaps when he says learning from other people, is The person that's open to studying more and learning more because they know that they don't know everything, that makes a person wise. The person that says that I know everything, even if they know so much, but if they're not open to learning more, then that person is lacking basic wisdom. They're not open to, they're not open to learning more and studying more. Whereas the person maybe who's not so smart, who's not so educated, who is not so brilliant, but they know that, and they're open and seeking to gain more knowledge, so then that person is a wise person. A symptom of that, Stephen, would be such a person that's seeking to gain more information and wisdom and insight. Yes, such a person will pass some very good judgments in their life. That's why, King Solomon, when he told God, gave him this came to him in the dream and said, what can I grant you? And he said, wisdom. I would think that King Solomon was a very smart man before God granted him all that wisdom. I'm sure he had a very high IQ level. We're not talking about a gypsy. We're talking about King Solomon being raised in the house of David, who was educated, I'm sure, as a child by the highest professors and educators in the land at that time. And yet he said, grant me wisdom. I think it comes from the same idea, because he was open to seeking and learning more. It's at the age of, I'm 47 years old today. There are times when I'm stubborn and I feel like I know it all. That's a moment where I'm not being wise, where I'm being stuck in my 47-year-old mind and my life and everything else. And then when I'm open to things and learning things and learning from others, so that's what Ben Zoma, I think, is saying. Okay, going back here. Who is strong? One who overpowers his inclinations, or as I always say, her inclinations, we're just keeping it to one gender. One who overpowers their inclinations, as is stated. Better one who is slow to anger than one with might. One who rules his spirit than the captor of a city. But that's what Proverbs is. That's the proof text for what Ben Zoma is saying. So who is strong? One who overpowers his or her inclination. So basically, a person that has proper self-control, that's the strong one. So I recently decided to stop smoking cigarettes, Marlboro Lights. I would say I didn't do it often, probably a few cigarettes a week, like people take a glass of wine. And I decided at this age, you know what, I'm going to give it up. Even though I'm a clean guy, I don't drink, no addictions, no drugs. I come home on time from work. I'm a pretty clean cut kind of guy. The only thing that I kept to my youth was my few Marlboro Lights a week. And I decided to give it up. And it was very difficult. And the truth is, I'm only 3 or 4 months into it. Some, different reasons why I decided to give it up. But the point is how I'm going to continue to not go down that path of enjoying those few cigarettes is because I'm going to have self-control, and I have free choice, and I have the control to decide, should I smoke the cigarette or should I not smoke the cigarette? Should I take the drink or should I not? Obviously, there are some people that do not have that free choice for some biological genetic issues, and they need to take medicines, and they need to go obviously to rehab centers and so forth. But I'm talking about the regular meal kind of guy like myself. I'm not talking about someone that already was deemed by doctors as an addict or something like that. So that's a separate something separate. But we're talking about regular people over here, someone that, likes their hamburgers every Tuesday or whatever it is, and they deciding, or they come late to school, or they come late to home for dinner time, things that we know that are in people's control. The strong person is the person that controls their yetzer, their inclination, which is very, very difficult. I mean, I know people that got divorced because this guy was always coming home late for dinner time. And he blew it. How many times can his wife say, just call me if you're running late? And he wouldn't. He would call an hour after being late. I'm coming home in an hour. She had to put the kids to bed and this and that. There's only so much a person can have themselves be rolled over by their spouse. It just shows this lack of care and sensitivity by this husband. So she called it, after 2 years of this type of behavior, she called it the quits. I'm not going into now if she was right or not. The fact is that if he cannot control himself and he's not exercising his free choice, because it's not like his boss tied him up with duct tape. He made the wrong choice. He put somebody else before his wife. So the strong person is the individual that could and should control himself. I with my cigarettes, the other guy with coming on time. Okay? Who is rich? A person who is happy with their lot. Who is rich? The person that is happy with their lot. As it states in Psalms, if you eat of toil of your hands, fortunate are you, and good is to you. Fortunate are you in this world, and good to you in the world to come. So when we say who is happy with their lot, it's a little interesting because we have a bit of a... Is Uzi here? I thought Uzi was going to be in here. I guess not.
Yeah.
You are here, Uzi. Well, I don't see my thing here.
Well,
Okay.
you don't, because I killed the video. Because, yeah.
Okay, very good. No problem. No problem. Very
late.
good.
I'll listen for a few minutes because
very
I love
good. And I love you too, Uzi. Thank you. So this idea of who is, so we took care about who is strong. So who is strong? The person that has self-control. As we see, a person that lacks self-control, the marriage could collapse. It can end in divorce. People can lose their jobs. So who is the strong person who has self-control and control their inclination and exercises their free choice and chooses the right thing? Who is rich? A person that's happy with their lot. Miha Asher Sameach B'Chalkei. Now, what's interesting is I remember seeing a video that Yitzchak Rabin, Alav HaShalom, before he was prime minister, he served in the 70s as an ambassador to the United Nations. And this Yitzchak Rabin once had a yechidut, a one-on-one audience with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he mentioned to the liaison between Chabad and the United Nations, I'll come to the Rebbe, but do me a favor, I don't want any media there. Sure enough, he comes at around 1 a.m. for the one-on-one yechidut, and there's media all over the place. And it's just interesting the way he says the interview. Yitzchak Rabin, we have the footage of this interview. Anyway, so he mentioned a few interesting things in this one-on-one yechidut with the Rebbe. One of the, I'll share both ideas. One was the Rebbe asked him something from last week's Torah portion, and he asked him, "Do you feel alone? Alone. Do you feel alone?" And Yitzchak Rabin was a little bit taken off guard. He thought he was going to speak maybe some Israeli politics or some Torah, and the Rebbe went to the character, went to the psychology of how did Yitzchak Rabin feel working at the United Nations. And what's interesting was Rabin was open and honest with the Rebbe. And he said, it's funny you're asking because just the other day, I was walking through the hallways and I heard some other ambassadors saying some anti-Semitic remarks about Jewish people. Openly, not in the hallways right there in the chambers over there at the United Nations. And he says, I was troubled by it. So it's funny that you're asking, how do I feel? And Yitzchak Rabin says, I do feel alone. I actually do feel alone. even though he's with whatever it is, 180 countrymen, different ambassadors from different countries, but he feels alone because he's the only Jew representing the only Jewish, the only nation, the only Jewish nation, Israel. And the Rebbe said it's interesting because Bilam, the prophet that we read in last week's Torah portion on Shabbat, to curse the Jewish people, he told the non-Jewish king Balak that this is a nation that lives alone. Am levadad yishkon. This is a nation that lives alone. And the Rebbe continued to Yitzchak Rabin, although he meant it as a curse, and we are in some ways cursed because we are alone. We are isolated. There is anti-Semitism. There is this extra jab to the minority people, the Jewish people. But on the other hand, said the Rebbe, there is an element of blessing here because we are not, so to speak, isolated, but we're also insulated. And on the one hand, it seems negative that we are alone, but on the other hand, we're able to flourish as Jewish people. There's less assimilation. Sometimes it's Jewish rabbis that remind us that we're Jewish, or our Jewish mothers remind us that we're Jewish. And sometimes it's the Goyim, the non-Jews, that remind us that we're Jewish. And these reminders reminding us that we're Jewish, perhaps is an assistance as to how we're here thousands of years later, even through the exiles. So that was just an interesting discussion that the Rebbe had with Yitzchak Rabin. But the second thing is the discussion of this paragraph of who was rich, who was happy, and the answer is who was happy with his lot is the wealthy person. So Rabin, who knows a little bit Torah, asked the Rebbe, but it also says the person that has 100 wants 200. A person is not content. We know a person that has $100 wants $200. And it actually says this in Pirkei Avot, in Ethics of the Sages, that we're taught not to be content. And here we say, who is rich? He who is happy with his lot. Make up your mind. Should we be happy with our lot or should we strive higher? So the answer is, we have to differentiate between spiritual matters and physical matters. When we're dealing with physical matters, with actual wealth, so we have to say who is wealthy, who is happy with their lot. I have a house, I own my house, I should be happy. I don't know if it's in Pirkei Avot, Uzi, but it does say, Mishi yesh le meya reitza Messiah. A person that has 100 wants 200. And we have, I'm going to find you another quote. Give me 1 second, Uzi. I'm going to find you the quote because I read it. Uzi is asking, where do we see that if a person has something that he wants more? Yeah?
I didn't ask that. I asked, what does Pirkei Avot say we should want more? The reality is that people can want more, but it's not what we should want.
That's true. So I'm reading it right now. It's in Kohelet, where a wealthy person's inclination is to desire more and more wealth. So you're saying, but it doesn't say we should want it. No. So I have to look that up, Uzi, in that regard. But it seems there seems to be this level of welcoming this kind. In other words, I have to look it up in Koheles, but it doesn't seem like it's a negative connotation that a person that wants 100, that wants 200 is like there's something negative there. In any case, this is what Rabin did ask. And the commentaries seem to answer, this is what he said that the Rebbe answered, that there's a difference between spiritual and physical. If we're dealing with physical, which is what this Mishnah of Pirkei Avot is talking about, but Ben Zoma said, so if I have $100 or if I have $1 million, I'll be happy. But when we're dealing with spiritual matters, which is what perhaps Shlomo HaMelech is talking about in Kohelet, that a person that has 100 wants 200, there we're talking about spiritual matters. We should not say that if I'm Orthodox or I'm religious, I'm good enough. Mendel Schwartz is good. I keep Shabbat. No, we should want more. I should demand more of myself. So that's where we don't say in spiritual matters ever, who was wealthy? I'm happy with my lot. We do not say that in spiritual matters. We can say that in physical matters. Give me one more minute before I continue. There's an interesting, let me just read this paragraph, okay? Lot and his wife, remember Lot, and these are people from Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot and his wife could have easily been satisfied with their spiritual status living in Sodom and Gomorrah by looking around them, looking behind them at those who were being destroyed. We know the angels, this is Abraham's niece and nephew. They were saved from Sodom and Gomorrah, and the angels took them out of this town. And the angel said, but don't look behind you. We're destroying this town. We're going to evacuate you, but don't look behind. The angel warns them and says, do not look behind you. Do not measure yourself by those inferior to you. Do not stand on any of the plain. Do not remain complacent and satisfied with yourself. You must constantly move and grow. The angel says, run to the mountain. You must constantly rise and grow in your spiritual life. Lot's wife, who did look back, because she always was measuring her spiritual status by the people she was living with, so she did look back, and what happened? She turns into salt. Because she contrasted herself with those inferior to her, that's how she lived. She measured herself based on how she was and how the people, her neighbors, were living in Sodom. So she became complacent and inanimate, like salt, which does not experience any growth. So that was her punishment, Lot's wife. She was complacent like an inanimate being. She looked behind her. So what's midah keneged midah? An eye for an eye, so to speak. She turned into a pillar of salt. Whereas Lot, who did not look, he did not measure his spiritual life by his neighbors. He was looking for spiritual growth. He listened to the angel. He climbed the mountain. He fled Sodom. And he was looking to turn over a new leaf and to grow even higher. Because when we're dealing with spiritual matters, we're always looking to grow, and we never should say, Miha Asher Hasamech Bechalke. That we only say in physical matters, in gashmis and money and things like that. Okay, continuing. Who is honored? I'm going to open up what we read over here. Give me a second. Give me a second, guys. I just have to look up my, there it is. Okay. Who is honorable? One who honors his fellows, as is stated, for to those who honor me, I accord honor. Those who scorn me shall be demeaned. Okay, mechabed esabrias. Now, what's interesting is some of you don't know Hebrew, so in the Hebrew, it doesn't say fellows. Here in the English, it says who is honorable, one who honors his fellows. But in Hebrew, it says ezeu michubad, who is honorable, hamechabed et habrios, who honors his, does not say fellows, it says mechabed et habriot, which means who honors creatures. Creatures is like the lowest level of our human culture. So if you honor kings and queens or politicians or your idols, your Taylor Swifts, fill in the blank for your fantasy, so that doesn't make you anything. If you honor creatures, whether they're animals or humans who did not make it big, they don't drive the Bentley, they don't have the big job, they don't have the big life. If you honor those people, then you will be honored indeed. Sometimes we lose the meaning of things when we just have the English. Okay, Sylvia, you want to go? Mishnah 2, Ben Azai would say.
I just want to say that's a beautiful insight, you know?
Well, thanks, Susie.
But that's a beautiful insight, that it's not about anyone necessarily of importance, but even the simplest people.
Yeah, that's how you see it. You know, you say, how do you know a good company is how they treat their employees. How they treat their customers, of course, they're going to treat the customers nicely, especially if I come with American Express Unlimited and I'm ready to shop in someone's store, whether it's cars or clothing or food. but how they treat their employees. And that's kind of, I think, along these lines too.
Wow.
Go ahead, Sylvia, if you could unmute yourself. Ben Azai would say.
Okay, Ben Azai would say, run to pursue a minor mitzvah and flee from a transgression. For a mitzvah brings another mitzvah, and a transgression brings another transgression. For the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the reward of a transgression is transgression.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. So in Judaism, we're very careful when it comes to sins, because we feel that if a person sins today, they may come to sin tomorrow. For somebody that's dieting, the last thing we want is the person to break the diet. And we won't say, you know what, if you break the diet only for breakfast, you should, it's not good, but you'll be okay. We don't say that, because we know once you break the diet, there's pretty much no stopping from you breaking it for lunch, or from you breaking it the next day, or someone like myself that I jog, or I'm on the elliptical 4 times a week, and I say, this week I'm gonna take the week off. It's gonna cause that next week I'll be much more laxy-daisy in my exercise, and so on and so forth. So we're very careful about not sinning, even if it's just temporarily. Because as Sylvia, you just read, because one sin can cause to another sin. Breaking the diet this morning will break something else for lunch. And the reverse is also true. When a person does a mitzvah, it pushes them to do another mitzvah. If I'm nice to a person today, or I go out of the way to light Shabbat candles this Friday night, I have a higher likely chance I'm going to do it next Friday night. And it won't be a fluke, but that'll become part of I go to a Torah class, and so on and so forth. There is, though, something that the next part of the paragraph, that's what you read there. It says, for the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah, and the reward of a sin is a sin. What does that mean? A reward of the mitzvah is a mitzvah. If you say the reward of the mitzvah is Olam Haba, the Garden of Eden. The reward of a mitzvah is, I don't know, I'll get a raise. If I do good sales for my boss, and I sold a lot of insurance plans, what's my reward? I want my package. I want my bonus package. The reward of the mitzvah should be in my bonus package. I want a bigger house, whatever it is. Here we're saying the reward of praying, the reward of a mitzvah, that is the reward. The reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah. The reward for putting on tefillin, what's the reward for putting on tefillin? That I put on tefillin. Seems a little strange. The reward for keeping Shabbos is that I keep Shabbos. Should be the reward for keeping Shabbat is that I get a job. That God will give me my bashert. Uzi, how do you explain that?
Well, the problem is that the world around us doesn't reflect that notion. When you look at, and don't forget when this gentleman lived, right? Don't forget what he saw in his day. The world doesn't reflect the idea that if I keep Shabbos, I'll get a job, or whatever the examples you gave. It's not the world we see. And that's the question that goes back to the prophets. It's not the reality of life as we see it.
Yeah, but if an employee is working for an individual and he's crushing it and he's doing well, he expects that the reward he should be compensated.
I understand. So all you've shown is that equation is not relevant regarding mitzvah.
Okay. So the twist here is we have to ask ourselves first, what is a mitzvah? So I was loose when I said mitzvah. Mitzvah, I said, I gave you examples of lighting Shabbat candles, or keeping the Shabbat, or putting on the tefillin, or keeping kosher, or fill in the blank, right? These are different mitzvot. But we're calling all these things a mitzvah. So what's the common denominator with the mitzvah of Shabbat, or the mitzvah of kosher, or the mitzvah of lighting candles, or the mitzvah of love thy fellow. What is a mitzvah? We're calling all these things mitzvah, but these are all separate, different acts, very different actions. A mitzvah of getting married. What's a mitzvah? What's the mitzvah here? So what is a mitzvah? So first, the definition of a mitzvah comes from the word tzavta v'chibur. It's Hebrew, but it means to connect via, let's say, a rope, or you're connecting with God. A mitzvah is an opportunity for me to have a relationship and a connection with God. The word mitzvah in Hebrew comes from mitzavsa v'chibur, to connect, like a rope that connects this side of the room to that side of the room. So that is a mitzvah. A mitzvah in modern day English basically means connection. So thus, the mitzvah, whether it's Shabbat, or whether it's tefillin, or whether it's lighting Shabbat candles, it's all the same thing. What do you mean by say the same thing? It's another avenue for me to connect to God, to have a relationship with God. That is a mitzvah. Sometimes I'm connecting to God through eating kosher, taking the cheese out of the cheeseburger. That is a way that I'm connecting to God. Sometimes it's by praying in a synagogue as a mitzvah. So I'm having a relationship with God through going to synagogue and praying. Sometimes I'm praying in my house like I did this morning, and that is a mitzvah. Or lighting candles, that is a mitzvah. So these are all what a mitzvah means: having a relationship, making a connection to God. And we say that the rope has 613 strands. You know, rope is a very thick rope. So you have 613 strands in this rope. And through each mitzvah, we're connecting these little strands. And now you have one thick, tight rope. So that's a mitzvah. So now, when we say the words, what Sylvia just said, the reward of a mitzvah is a mitzvah. So let's say this now in English. The reward for me keeping Shabbat is a mitzvah that I'm now having a relationship with God. That is my reward. What's the whole reason why I did the mitzvah in the first place? Is to have a relationship with God. So the reward of me doing the mitzvah is the mitzvah, that I have a relationship with God. That's the highest reward. That's why I'm doing it. Lucky me that I'm able to have a connection and a relationship and this bond with God through the mitzvah. God forbid that I would do a mitzvah and I wouldn't be connected to God. That would be the opposite of doing a mitzvah. So the reward of me keeping Shabbos is the mitzvah, is that now I have a relationship with God. You see, non-Jews, I know Uzi will get maybe a little bent out of shape over here, but non-Jews that were not commanded to put on tefillin, or non-Jews that were not commanded, let's say, to light the Shabbat candles or go to mikveh. So for them, if they do the mitzvah, the reward can't be the mitzvah. They can do other things. We can give them the 7 Noahide laws. They can be nice to people. That's a nice thing. That's a mitzvah. But not all mitzvahs. They were not commanded. They were not asked to do particular mitzvahs. They were not asked to have a relationship with me through Shabbat, through going to a mikveh, or through putting on tefillin. But here we're saying, Ben Azai is saying, that for us, the reward of the mitzvah, of whatever mitzvah we're talking about, what is the reward? That now that is the mitzvah, that I have a relationship with God. This is a major gift. Because prior to Mount Sinai, we really didn't have that relationship with God. There was not this connection, this relationship of the Jews and God. And even today, if I pick up a brick, for example, I go to my front lawn, I pick up a brick. There's no mitzvah in that. I don't have a relationship with God because I picked up a 10-pound brick. I mean, I'll feel good maybe. I did exercise, but there's no relationship with God by picking up a 10-pound brick. Yet, when I pick up a lulav and an esrig on Sukkot, that is a mitzvah. So the reward for the mitzvah of picking up a little of an esrog, what is my reward? That I have a relationship with God. The reward of the mitzvah, is the relationship with God. That is my reward. That's what I'm doing here. That's where I'm living here on planet Earth. Why did God put me on planet Earth? So I can grow a black beard, so I can grow a white beard, so I can put $100,000 in the bank. God put me here so I can get married and I can give to my children an inheritance of $1 million. I'm here because my soul is in a body, and now in a body, as I am now, this Mendel Schwartz being, and I'm able to have a relationship with God. This is a big deal. This is why I'm here. So the reward of the mitzvah, is the relationship. Okay, let's do one more. Mark Gale, if you're there, unmute yourself and do 3.
All right. You want me to read what? Number 5?
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay. I was reading ahead there. Sorry. Let me go back up here. Number 3 is, he would say, do not scorn any man and do not discount anything, for there is no man who has not his hour, and no thing that has not its place.
Okay, so I think this is, to me, somewhat self-understood. Don't scorn another man. Don't discount anything. For there is no man who has not his hour, and no thing that has not its place. Let me see, I read something interesting on this. Give me 1 minute. It's interesting that the commentaries over here take it to a time when there were people that were not nice to an individual, and that individual ended up climbing in power as a non-Jewish king, and he made it difficult for the Jewish people. That's at least how this Ben Azai was trying to somewhat reprimand individuals who kind of screwed it up for the community. So he said, guys, don't scorn any man and do not discount anything, for there is no man who has not his hour. Be careful, and no thing that has not its place. This guy will climb up the rungs of the ladder and we may be in trouble. You know, that kind of thing. That's a lot of more commentary, but let's just continue a little more, okay? Uzi, if you're still there, do the last one for me. Number 4, Rebbe Levitas of Yavna.
I am here. I was actually hoping that you would say something about this rather extraordinary teaching. I think it's very humble to say every person has a time, and if I disrespect a person, they'll come back to bite me. I think it's a remarkably humble teaching.
The reason why I don't care for that interpretation of this Mishnah 3 is because here we're trying to teach people good character traits about who is wealthy, who's happy with their lot, who is strong, who controls their characteristic trait. And now in 3, when we talk about don't scorn other people, the commentators tell us it's because every dog basically has their day, and be careful lest you get, you get bit in the tuchus in 30 years from now, because you're gonna have to answer to that person. It seems somewhat negative to me, and it seems somewhat of an ulterior motive, like as that's the reason why we should be nice to our classmates in college, because some of them may climb up the rungs and be a judge on the Supreme Court. It doesn't ring well for me, and that's why I'm somewhat troubled with that that commentary.
I don't think it's saying that as the sole reason, but it's like, do you can have multiple reasons for things, and you may you punish and reward children for things for which ultimately that shouldn't be the reason for them to behave, but it's how you get them to behave, and then later as they mature, they learn the proper reasons.
Yes, what you're saying is 1,000% true. Maimonides says the same thing about telling kids Messiah is going to come. They're going to get candy. Eventually when they get older, they'll understand it hopefully better and things like. You're right, but it just seems inconsistent because in Mishnah 1 and 2, clearly we're speaking about adults. I'm not going to go through the discussion that we just had in the last 30, 40 minutes. So now in Mishnah 3, we're speaking about these ulterior motives, and you're telling me, Stephen, it's kind of like when we speak to children that they should behave because it just seems somewhat inconsistent with our dialogue that we were having in Mishnah 1 and 2.
What I was saying applies to adults too. Do you not sin because you don't want God to punish you, or do you not sin because it's wrong, or is it both?
Right. No, it's true. We do it because it's the right thing to do. Right. We want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. We don't want to do it for reward. And also we don't do the wrong things, not because of the consequence, because we just don't want to do the wrong things. Right. We shouldn't steal from our friend even $10 because it's wrong to take someone else's money. You're right. But again, I'm just only because I'm back to Mishnah 1 and 2. It's giving such a high training to adults. We're talking about, right, who is wise, who is wealthy, who is strong. We're speaking about tremendous. We're just jumping into the interior of the human, of the psychology, of the character traits. We talked about before self-choice, free choice, addictions. And now we're talking about something like with this very ulterior motive about be nice so that you're not going to get backstabbed later in life. Okay, listen, I obviously I'm not there is more commentary, but I haven't seen it in this book that I'm using. I guess I'm just answering Uzi why I sort of just glossed over it and moved to 4.
I know, but it's grabbed my attention. I think for 2 reasons. A, I think the Mishnah in Hebrew reads Al tehibaz lechol adam. Is that correct?
Hold on. Lechol adam, yes.
That means that, Mishnah 1, Mishnah 2, but they get people that you think, oh, this is the dregs of society. These are the dregs of society.
Right.
And then this reminder that even this person who right now is at the very, very bottom, I think it's giving a backup to Mishnah 1, kind of like what Stephen said. It's a little bit like what, we're told to love God and to fear God. You do things out of love, but the backup is fear. You don't want to that's something the Rambam says earlier in the teaching of, Al tiyu kavadim v'hi morash shamayim alechem. Is you do, the Rambam says here, do for the right reasons. Nevertheless, your backup is morash shamayim. I think it's a credit that it might be this over here as well. I also think the idea, I think it's a powerful idea here that every person, we might look at that person and say, oh, this is the bottom of the barrel. Oh, I could, it's human nature to do that. And there's a reminder here that life is strange. People on the bottom could be on the top. People on the top could be on the bottom.
Okay, that's good.
Hashem is, mashvil game, like biashfalim. I think it just seems to me that it's the way of humility. Just because right now they're on the bottom and we're better off than them doesn't mean it's going to always be that way, and it's not an inheritance to them. Right?
Good. That's good. That's good. What you're saying is good.
And so it could be a supplement to Mishnah 1 and 2. I don't. They kind of sit side by side.
Fair enough. I'm going to further research this. Also, I just read over here some of the small italics over here. Something that Levi Yitzchak, I believe this is from Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, who always like to look at people favorably no matter what they did. So he translates this to say, do not scorn any man and do not discount anything. So he's stating you should be friends with everybody, even the person that you look negatively upon, where seemingly you have a right to scorn at that person because he or she is not doing what they should be doing. So even to that person, we're telling you, do not scorn any man and do not discount anything. Because according to this Rebbe, Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, every person is a human being and every person should be kind of taken in and welcomed in. And that's how he's translating this Mishnah 3.
You know, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And one of the themes over there is exactly this theme. So one of the themes running around is that when people want to interview people for jobs, they put one of the officers of the company in front of the entrance to the building, masquerading as a homeless person, to watch how the interviewees will treat him. And the one who treats the supposed homeless person best gets the job because they're showing real character. And the ones who are too busy and jump over him, well, that's not what they're looking for.
Beautiful, beautiful,
And
beautiful.
I wonder if there's some employers that do the same test, but with the opposite criteria, that they're looking for somebody who treats the homeless person badly.
Yeah, sure.
Because they don't want employees who are considerate and fair, and they want employees who are going to consider only the interests of the rich person.
Oh, that's Bill Gates Foundation of the United Nations.